For centuries, children have been enthralled by the seemingly simple story of Jack and the Beanstalk, a young boy who inadvertently trades his family's cow for magic beans, then climbs an enormous beanstalk to reach a land in the clouds where he steals treasure from a fearsome giant only to escape with his life when the creature comes looking for him. The moral of the story is usually presented as one of hard work or honesty, but there are other, much darker interpretations if we know where to look. In today's episode, we're going to take you back 5,000 years to uncover the truth behind the world's oldest folktales. Welcome to my channel. It is time to explore once again the hidden history that lies beneath the myths and legends of our past. And today, we'll journey into the realm of fairy tale. There is a popular notion that fairy tales are little more than fanciful stories composed to entertain children, and that they first started appearing in the late 17th century, thanks to the likes of the brothers Grimm and Hans Christian Andersen. But this idea couldn't be further from the truth. Fairy tales existed long before these authors were even born. In fact, their roots can be traced back thousands of years. Some of the most well-known fairy tales are actually based on earlier folk tales, which often had very different endings than the versions we tell today. For example, Hansel and Gretel was originally about two children who were abandoned in the forest, but instead of being rescued by a passing prince, they managed to outsmart the witch and find their way home. Similarly, Snow White was not always a sweet and innocent princess. She was known for her quick wit and courage, and was ultimately able to defeat the evil queen without the help of a handsome prince. These are just two examples of how fairy tales have evolved over time. But perhaps none is more intriguing than the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, a tale that has captured the imaginations of children and adults alike for generations. Now, if you want to hear the original version of this story, you're going to have to go back some 5,000 years and travel to the ancient Nordic lands. Jack and the Beanstalk may have originated from a much older folktale about Norse World Trees. These tales feature a giant tree that connects the 9 realms of Norse mythology and allows gods and monsters to travel between them. Yggdrasil, the cosmic tree, is said to have been planted by the gods at the beginning of time, and its branches spread out over all the realms, providing a way for creatures from different worlds to interact with one another. It is believed that when people began to settle down and build permanent homes and villages, they would have looked up at the towering trees that surrounded them and thought of them as miniature versions of Yggdrasil, the cosmic tree. These local trees became sacred because they symbolized the connection between the physical world and the spiritual realm, and they were seen as a way for humans to interact with the gods. Over time, these beliefs and customs became incorporated into the folklore of different cultures, and the stories of world trees became known as Norse myths. But it is in the Germanic variant of the myth that we see the earliest telling of Jack and the Beanstalk. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You're probably thinking, Norse mythology and Germanic folklore are completely different. How could something from one tradition show up in the other? Well, here's the thing. During the late 8th century AD, a group of Germanic people called the Goths migrated to Scandinavia and settled in the area now known as Norway and Sweden. They brought with them their own language and customs, including their own version of the World Tree myth. This myth was called Dason and the Giant Badvar, and it tells the story of a young man named Dason who lives at the bottom of a deep ravine. One day, he sees a beautiful woman standing on top of a nearby mountain and falls madly in love with her. Desperate to be with her, he asks his mother to make him some climbing beans so that he can scale the mountain and win her heart. His mother, however, refuses, warning him that the woman is a giant and that trying to climb the mountain will be impossible. But Dason ignores his mother's advice and plants the beans anyway, and much to his surprise, they begin to grow into a massive beanstalk that reaches all the way to the clouds. Filled with hope, Dason climbs the beanstalk and finds the woman he had seen from afar. He spends the night with her and she becomes pregnant with his child. But when the giantess's husband returns from a hunting trip and discovers the pair together, he throws Dason down the beanstalk and chops it down so that no one could climb up and escape. Desperate to save himself, Dason grabs onto a passing bird and rides it back to his mother's house. Meanwhile, the giantess gives birth to twins, a son and a daughter, and names them after the two birds that Dason had used to escape. As they grow older, the twins become aware of the prophecy that says one of them will eventually kill their father. Fearing for their future, they decide to run away from home. The son climbs up the beanstalk, while the daughter hides in a box and waits for someone to open it. As she predicted, the giant god Bovari comes across the box, opens it, and takes her to live with him in his hall. There she becomes his wife and eventually gives birth to a son, but she never forgets her twin brother and his terrible fate at the hands of their father. Years pass and the son grows to become a fierce warrior. He hears rumors of his father's cruelty and decides to confront him. The two brothers meet in battle and engage in a fierce fight, but in the end, it is the giant god Bovari who comes out on top. He kills his nephew and takes his head as a trophy, only to be confronted by Dasan's son, who challenges him to a fight of his own. This time, however, the young man is victorious and avenges his father's death. This tale shows the evolution of the Jack and the Beanstalk story from a purely mythical context to a more human one. It also explores themes of fate, free will, good and evil, which are common in many It is believed that this story was passed down orally for centuries, before it was written down in its final form in the 16th century. Another fascinating aspect of this tale is the possible influence of Bronze Age sky gods on its narrative. The figure of the giant Badvar has been linked to Bronze Age sky gods such as Tyrannus and Zeus. These deities were often depicted as bearded men holding a hammer or axe, and they were associated with thunder, lightning, and storms. The image of the giant Badvar wielding an axe fits perfectly with the descriptions of these sky gods, suggesting that the story of Jack and the Beanstalk may have originated from a much older pagan tradition. As Northern Europe transitioned from paganism to Christianity, the old myths and legends were often demonized and distorted to fit the new religious narrative. The story of Jack and the Beanstalk is a prime example of this, as the original tale likely had very different characters and themes than the version we know today. Now, this may seem like nothing more than an interesting piece of folklore, but it really goes to show how deeply rooted these ancient stories are in human culture. Even after thousands of years, they continue to capture our imaginations and teach us important lessons about the world around us. So the next time you hear a fairy tale, take a moment to appreciate its rich history and the countless people who have shared it over the years. Who knows? You may just discover something new and exciting that you never knew before. Speaking of exciting things you didn't know before, what did you think about today's episode? Let me know in the comments below. Also, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a like as well. Until next time, stay curious, keep asking questions, and never stop exploring the world around you. After all, there's so much more to our past than meets the eye, and I'm just here to help you see it.